How's everybody doing? Terrible, I know. The inmates are running the asylum, the barbarians are at the gates, and there are no gates. As Karen was saying, I grew up in Berkeley years ago, and where I was marinated in Marxist, leftist, progressive ideology, where I learned that America is the most evil country in the world, that capitalism is the cause of all poverty, and corporations are faceless, heartless exploiters of starving workers, and they have too much power. But at least I learned, thanks to the free speech movement on the university campus there, and I quote, "American students are united on one issue, and that's the First Amendment privileges of freedom of speech, the right to advocate, discuss at any time and any place as long as it doesn't disturb classes or interfere with traffic." Right. If you'll indulge me, I'd like to digress for a minute with a short quote from a piece of classic literature. But before I do, I must warn you. Some of you may find this material deeply disturbing. You may be triggered by it and have to retreat to your safe space or get taxpayer-funded counseling to recover from the emotional trauma of hearing this. All right? You've been warned. In a village of La Mancha, the name of which I have no desire to recollect, there lived not long ago one of those gentlemen that keep a lance on the rack, an old buckler, a lean horse, and a swift greyhound. A stew of rather more beef than mutton, a hodgepodge on most nights, scraps on Saturdays, lentils on Fridays, and a pigeon or so extra on Sundays consumed 3/4 of his income. The rest of it went in a doublet of fine cloth and velvet breeches and shoes to match for holidays, while on weekdays he cut a fine figure in his best homespun. His household consisted of a housekeeper above 40, a niece not quite 20, and a lad who served him both in the field and at home, who could saddle the horse or handle the pruning hook. The age of our gentleman bordered upon 50 years. He was of a strong constitution, spare-bodied, of a meager visage, an early riser, and lover of the chase. Okay, has anybody been triggered yet? Anybody need to run screaming out of the room? Yeah, okay, well, I'm sure some of you will in a minute. That passage is the opening of the epic classic Don Quixote de la Mancha, written over 400 years ago by Miguel de Cervantes. It is to this book that we owe to this day such current expressions as quixotic or tilting at windmills, among others. It is one of the great achievements of Western culture and civilization. Oops, did I say Western civilization? I do apologize. Not. Here's the thing. As an economist, I'm intrigued by the description of Don Quixote's economic existence, particularly as it pertains to food. Basically, it took 75% of his income to eat leftovers without a fridge or a microwave. And the thing is, Cervantes is not describing a poor man by the standards of his day. Don Quixote was, in fact, a relatively well-to-do gentleman who wore fine clothes, employed servants, and enjoyed many hours of leisure reading books in his private library. How do we resolve the cognitive dissonance between what we today consider poverty and what our ancestors considered luxury? For the fact of the matter is that not that long ago, no king, no pope, no sultan, no emperor could get an MRI, could travel halfway around the world in safety and comfort in less than a day, could be cured of infections with antibiotics, could download an app, could send a text message, could walk into a supermarket and choose from among 30,000 products from around the world. Yet today, all of this is within the means of the most common, ordinary citizen who takes it for granted as the normal state of things. But it is not normal in the least in the context of 99% of human history. And we risk losing it all and going back to the norms of history if we don't correctly answer the question with a nod to Hillary Clinton, what happened? What happened to make all of this possible? Well, the short answer, of course, is that capitalism happened. And capitalism was spearheaded by the English-speaking Anglo-Saxon Magna Carta peoples of the world. Just ask John Hancock. With Great Britain and its offspring, such as the United States, taking turns leapfrogging each other over the past 300 years. Okay, by now, some of you should be throwing Molotov cocktails at me. I'm disappointed in you. But this is dangerous talk, isn't it? Because if you were to come to the conclusion that, contrary to your upstanding upbringing in the People's Republic of Berkeley, that it is in fact capitalism and not socialism that provides the greatest prosperity to the greatest number, then you might be tempted to promote this idea in the public square. You might put up a pro-capitalist website and make pro-capitalist speeches and write pro-capitalist articles for conservative magazines. You might use your influence to support anyone. I don't know, say Bob Dole or Mitt Romney or a ham sandwich or Jeb Bush. Anyone who could prevent Saul Alinsky's stepdaughter from leveraging her coup against the DNC in order to cap off the fundamental and catastrophic transformation of America. The fact that Donald Trump is, in fact, the indispensable man of the time is merely the icing on the cake. But as we know, participating in this way, as has already been said a couple hundred times here today, participating in this way in the public square can be hazardous to one's economic health. Science professors get fired when their research doesn't come to the politically correct conclusions. Just ask Jim Enstrom. Conservative speakers are banned from university campuses and have their online accounts shut down. Just ask Jamie Glazoff and half the people in this room. Tea Party groups get harassed by the IRS with impunity. Just ask Karen Kenney. Any critical discussion of Islam in the public square is suppressed to the full extent of the left's power. We have arrived at a point where to advocate or discuss anything at any time or any place is to step into a minefield. Dennis Prager is called a Nazi. I work in information technology. A year ago, I got an attractive career offer from a company that I had been working for on and off for the 10 of the prior 12 years. At the last minute, they called to inform me that the offer had been rescinded due to undisclosed outside commercial interests which would not be possible to monitor. Right. Losing the job was bad enough. What I find most disturbing was there was no discussion, no debate, no negotiation, in spite of a 12-year relationship during which none of my outside activities or civic participation had ever been an issue. I rather wish that they had charged me with a crime so that at least I could subpoena their internal communications and cross-examine their witnesses. It's enough to make you believe that corporations are faceless, heartless exploiters of starving workers, and they have too much power. Ironically, this company's storefronts are prime targets for Antifa rioters, yet they consider me the threat. The really scary thing, of course, is that my case is not exceptional in the least. James Damore was fired from his tech job at Google when the diversity executive got caught wind of his public dissenting opinion on sex diversity in the workplace. I know this because I Googled it. Damore's firing was bad enough, but what I find most disturbing is that the attitude of many of Damore's colleagues would seem to be good riddance. It's enough to make you believe that corporations are faceless, heartless exploiters of starving workers, which apparently they are, except that now they are that way today because the left owns them. Because you have people like Hillary Clinton serving on the board of directors of Walmart, and CEOs spend their time sucking up to the Chris Dodds and to the Barney Franks, threatened but insulated from any actual capitalist market mechanisms that might compel them to focus on business instead of the furtherance of the progressive agenda. So how do we combat all of this? Let me suggest an example of how maybe not to do it. A few weeks ago at the California Republican Party convention in Anaheim, we were walking between the hotels on our way to the Steve Bannon dinner. All of a sudden, I became aware of protesters accosting us from two directions. Since I hadn't mentally prepared for this, I got triggered and got right back in one of their faces. Take off your mask, show your face. I kind of lost it. I yelled at him, he yelled at me, he tried to blow me off with a few obscenities and go back to his chant of, November 4th, November 4th. So I aped him, shouting, November 4th, take off your mask, show your face. Long story short, after a few minutes, a remarkable thing happened. He took off the bandana that was covering his face. I pressed him to also to remove the sunglasses that he was wearing in the dark. And he complied, saying somewhat defensively, I'm showing my face, I'm not hiding from anyone. To which I replied, thank you. Now you may call yourself a man. And turned on my heel and left him in peace. Now, I am not recommending that anyone follow this as the appropriate modus operandi, or put another way, don't try this at home, there are idiots at work here. But I do know this. In 1965, when our generation's radical leftist offensive was just getting underway, Ayn Rand penned an extended essay, The Cashing In, the Student Rebellion, in which she systematically deconstructed the fraud of the Berkeley free speech movement and of the radical progressive agenda. She ended it with an admonition to you and me assembled here today, which I will quote as I conclude. You would be surprised how quickly the ideologists of collectivism retreat when they encounter a confident intellectual adversary. Their case rests on appealing to human confusion, ignorance, dishonesty, cowardice, despair. Take the side they dare not touch. Appeal to human intelligence. Ladies and gentlemen, with a firm reliance on the protection of divine providence, those are our marching orders. Thank you.